Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, this time last week I was bullish, chipper about football, and this morning I'm nursing a hangover and a point, and I fear an apology to everyone who watched Match Today last night and the 26,000 people who sat through that yesterday. It was... I think there should be a rule in football, Kieran, where 5 minutes before kick-off, the two managers have a word with each other. They just say to the ref, 0-0, and everyone goes to the pub.
or stays in the pub.
Or stays in the pub, exactly. At least we're recording this Sunday morning quite early, so you can get off to watch Liverpool Brighton. You're going to get all the goals that we didn't get yesterday.
Very possibly. Yes, I spent yesterday morning, went down the beach. It was absolutely glorious. And then I came back and I became a good citizen.
Did you?
We just got home, and one of the neighbours sort of stuck her head out the door. Said to the Baroness, "Can I borrow your husband?"
Ooh.
Which I thought, yeah, there's no pampas grass around here, but I thought this is intriguing. And the Baroness said, "Okie dokes," and I turned in, and they'd been invaded by a very cranky magpie who had been throughout the whole house and was busy doing ploppies all over the place. And she didn't fancy having a go at it, except because they're quite ferocious. They're bigger than you think a magpie when you get up close to the buggers. So there was I, armed with a tea towel. So I didn't have a big butterfly net, and I went and caught this magpie and set it free. So all's well that ended well. So I am the official magpie hunter of Sussex.
Well done. Kieran. All magpies are cranky. They're a cranky. If the bird world has football in it, then the magpie will be the groundsman of the football world. And B, how have you got a butterfly net?
Well, no, I didn't have a butterfly net. That's why I used a tea towel.
Oh, you used a tea towel? You didn't? I see. Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah, because that's the obvious replacement for a butterfly net is a tea towel. Yes. Of course it is. Yeah, I once, when Ed was younger, I tried to persuade him that the one for sorrow, two for joy, that went up much higher. That if you saw 26 magpies, your granny would be arriving. And if you saw 32 magpies, Ireland would lose the Rugby World Cup. So he didn't fall for it. This show's been going on quite some time, Kieran. We've yet to talk about football finance, so shall we carry on and do that? It's Questions Day, but we do have two quite big stories, one local, one global, but both important in their own way to fans of the beautiful game. First of all, Scunthorpe United, Kieran, the takeover has completed. What do we know about the new owner of Scunthorpe?
Well, the new owner, Michelle Harness, she used to be the commercial manager at Scunthorpe United for around about 15 years. And I think recently she has been a director. I have reached out to try to get her on the show. But I think she's quite a private person and she just wants to get on with the job. But we will try and get somebody from Scunthorpe. There was an interesting press release. I think it's fair to say that it was pretty brief.
Yeah.
And it made reference to the assistance given by the former owner, David Hilton. But there's a couple of interesting phrases there. First of all, that they suggested that they hope he finds peace away from football.
Yeah.
I.e., David, probably best not to come back to football, was the way I interpreted that. And secondly, that he agreed to wipe all monies that he'd personally invested into the club.
Yeah.
That should be quite easy. If I put nothing into a club, I'd quite happily take nothing out of it as well.
But as you say, Kieran, it's quite a strange press release, in particular for a layman like me, because it seemed to imply that he basically that no money had changed hands, that he'd essentially given her the club, and that he would help facilitate any further move for the ground, and it was all very amicable and amiable. Have I got that right?
I think the takeover part probably is,
right.
Not least connected with the fact that the wages hadn't been paid the previous week by all accounts. So,
okay.
And I mean the good news is that it does appear that we're not going to be creating another Bury, because we've said the saddest thing about Bury is you've now got two factions. You've got the awkward squad
still,
who are still there, still causing a lot of grief, and you've got the majority of the fans. And the Scunthorpe fan base had become split, but I think a lot of people have said, okay, we just want to move forwards. And the great thing, on this yesterday, which was Saturday, over 5,000 people attending a match. This is the sixth tier of English football. That's just how much an individual club means to people. So great. We hope they go forwards. They're still under embargo from the National League in respect of other issues. So there are still some outstanding payments, I think, due to HMRC and so on, but that is being addressed. So hopefully that embargo will be lifted, and good luck to them for the rest of the season.
It looks, Kieran, as though the next Euros will be held in England and Ireland. Mm-hmm. And it looks like UEFA have been quite open about the fact that they're trying to refill the coffers post-COVID by giving it to countries that have a solid infrastructure and where the games are guaranteed to sell out. But the next, the 2030 World Cup, Kieran, this is a strange one for me, considering that if you go onto FIFA's website, it's only a couple of lines in before they talk about their responsibility to the environment and how important it is that football makes itself sustainable in an environmental way. And then they announce the location for the 2030 World Cup.
Yes, 3 continents, 6 countries. That means 6 automatic entrants into the finals, which goes with the territory. The justification, I mean, it is the centenary, so I can understand Uruguay wanting to be involved here, but Uruguay and Paraguay and is it Argentina, the 3 countries. Have been allocated 1 match each.
Yeah.
So those could be the 3 opening matches, presumably involving those 3 countries, you would expect, which means presumably that they can't be drawn against each other. So that seems a bit strange. I was talking to somebody from Chile on Thursday night after this had been announced, and he was going, well, we'd originally put in for a joint hosting with those 3 countries, so we've just been to be quietly kicked into the long grass, which seems very harsh. And then you've got Spain, Portugal, and Morocco representing UEFA and Africa, and you go, well, it just does seem very strange. And as far as FIFA's commitment to sustainability is concerned, that it was tokenism at the 2022 World Cup when you actually saw what actually happened. And I suspect it's exactly the same as far as this one is concerned. But of course, it does mean that because you cannot have the same confederations hosting consecutive World Cups, it rules out Europe, Africa, and South America. Given that North America or North and Central America is hosting the 2026 World Cup, that means there's a big Asia-shaped hole in 2034. And what a surprise, within hours of this announcement, Saudi Arabia said, oh, by the way, we'd quite like to host the World Cup in 2034. So, as always, when it comes to FIFA, it's all to do with power and money and the Machiavellian way that things take place in FIFA. I don't think they're even making any effort to try to hide things. At least they had sort of an element of denial with regards to the bribes for the 2018 and 2022 allocation of the World Cups. And there was a token investigation in which very restricted information was made available to the investigators. So that's where it is. But we'll, like all World Cups, once the tournament starts, we'll forget about it.
Oh lordy, yeah, of course. I mean, it's, as you say, Saudi Arabia have indicated interest, shall we say? I was trying to find the best way of saying that. Saudi Arabia have indicated interest in the 2034 World Cup. A couple of people have mentioned Australia. But there are also people saying, Kieran, that with the huge number of games now taking part, with the number of teams expanded so highly, that the days of one country World Cups are long gone, and that even Saudi Arabia, with all their wealth and infrastructure, a World Cup would be too much for them. Even Australia, the size of that country, and that in future it's only going to be multi-country models.
Well, that's that. There is some credence in that, but you should, we've managed to hold Olympic tournaments across 3 or 4 weeks in single countries.
That's true, yeah.
There's not that many people travelling. It is vastly overblown. I think in terms of the ability to host in a variety of countries, it's good that smaller countries with a multi-country model can still host. So I think that is a positive. So I've got nothing against it in theory. This is all to do with politics.
Yeah. Although we've seen with Saudi Arabia that with a lot of the sporting events they've been having there, boxing in particular, people will travel there, and they will find a very well established infrastructure, good hotels, and the World Cup experience will be very interesting and perfectly well run. But again, you can't, as you say, you can't help thinking that there is politics involved.
And also, Saudi Arabia has sort of hinted at alcohol might be available.
Yeah.
Now, look, my view. I don't drink alcohol, so I think if you're going to watch a football tournament, well, if you have to give up booze for a week or so, then I'm sure people can do that. But remember what happened in Qatar. Qatar said, "Oh yes, it will. You will be able to get alcohol at the tournament. You'll be able to get alcohol at the tournament." And then 2 days before the tournament starts, "Oh, we've changed their mind." And FIFA goes, "Oh, they've changed their mind." So we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I imagine Heineken will be. There's all sorts of politics with sponsors as well, isn't there? So, but let's save that for nearer the World Cup, Kieran, and let's get back to questions. As always, we've got some very interesting questions, and the first one comes from Zach Dalton. And again, this is one of those questions that I really like, Kieran, because it's something that we've talked about a lot, but without ever sort of explaining how it might actually happen in practice. And Zach Dalton says, "How are fan-owned clubs actually set up? I sometimes picture a group of 10 men." It's getting very Kevin Keegan there, Zach. I sometimes picture a group of 10 men in full kit shouting over a boardroom table, which I doubt is really the case. I assume they hire fully qualified staff in all roles, but I'm just wondering if those staff members need to support the club, as if all the big decisions are being made by staff who don't support the club. Is it really fan-owned? Does the board need to primarily support the club to make it fan-owned? Is there an official difference between a club being fan-owned or a club just being owned by a large number of shareholders from the local area? I'm particularly interested in that question about staff members and needing to support the club, because people like you, Kieran, get constantly asked by young people about how you get to work in football. And they're always surprised when they discover that not everybody at a particular football club supports that football club. So I'm interested in the answer to that question in particular.
Yes, Zach. Well, to answer that particular question, you want the best people in positions, and the best people don't have to necessarily support that particular football club. So what will happen is that if we take a look at member-owned clubs, and they range in size and in culture. Yeah, we've got the likes of Exeter. In fact, we've got people from Exeter coming on the show pretty soon. We've got AFC Wimbledon, both of those in the EFL. We've got Chesterfield in the NFL. The National League, not the NFL. And in Scotland, quite a few clubs have gone down the fan-owned route, ranging from Berwick Rangers to the likes of Motherwell and so on. And it is quite common overseas, but in a slightly different way. So Barcelona, in theory, are a members. They're a socios based, and if you go to Brazil, giant clubs, the likes of Flamengo and Fluminense, they are all not for profit sort of community clubs. But it does then very much vary. In theory, what you will have is effectively a membership scheme where the members vote for the executives at the club. Now, it could be that those executives are, of course, also fans, or it could be that you would appoint the board of directors from the membership, and then the board of directors might appoint an independent chief executive who has got experience of operating in the football industry, whereas the individual members, that they're devoted fans, but they might say, well, actually, I've got some gaps in my knowledge in terms of sort of the administration, the governance issues that go along with ensuring that you've got compliance with the rules of the EFL or the National League or the Football Association and so on. So I would always say get the best person for the job. The danger of having a fan orientated board is that it can become too emotional, and I think being able to detract yourself from the emotional side of football is a good thing at senior executive level. It's also a difficult thing, so there's no doubt about that. But and what do you do with clubs like Brentford and Norwich, where you could say, well, they're fan owned? You got Matthew Benham at Brentford. You've got Delia Smith. Historically, they were fans who happened to be successful in their own field, who have gone on to buy the club. So that's an individual fan-owned club. So there's lots of different tiers and different organisations. But in general, I think for what Zach was referring to, it would be you pay to be a member of the club. That will give you certain rights in terms of being able to vote in the executives. And quite often, sort of that initial enthusiasm sort of disappears, and you get back to to moaning about who the manager's picking at left back, and giving the poor linesman a load of grief on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and there's a sort of technical difference because there's quite a few fan-owned clubs. They don't have a chair or a chairperson, but the chair of the supporters trust. I think this is the case for Exeter. The chair of the supporters club is the de facto. The supporters association is the sort of de facto chairman of the club, isn't it? So there's a slight difference there. But annoyingly, Kieran, one of the chaps who works as a manager of the Palace for Life Foundation is a Brighton fan, and even more annoyingly, he's really good at his job. I know, but it still doesn't stop it being hilarious when I pretend to ignore him in meetings. Well, that's my interpretation of it. I think the other senior managers' interpretation of hilarious is slightly different to mine. Talking to the foundation, Kieran, I know this is a shameless plug. This time next week, I will be recovering from the 26-mile marathon march that I'm doing with many other people to raise money for the foundation to make life-changing choices and decisions for young people in South London. So if anybody wants to sponsor me, if they go to Just Giving and look for FYP or 5-year plan, I'm walking it with the lads from that wonderful fanzine. That would be very generous of them. And at the risk of embarrassing somebody called the Baron, Kieran, someone called the Baron has made a rather generous donation. Somebody called Producer Guy yet to dip his hand in his pocket. # Just Saying. Next question comes from... Sorry.
I also have to point out that somebody called the Baroness isn't aware of that generous donation.
The Baroness doesn't listen to the pod anymore, does she?
No, she gets too embarrassed.
Well, no, she might tune in to see whether her hero mentions his magpie work. I bet she was proud. I bet she was... I mean, I know she was. I know she's proud of you all the time, Kieran, but facing off... I'm looking forward to the gifts, Kieran. Like, remember when you talked about taking on the whole of Brentford? And someone sent a brilliant picture of your face transposed on someone ripping their shirt off. I'm looking forward to similar. I mean, that magpie didn't stand a chance. He didn't know who he was dealing with, did he?
I spoke to him about amortisation for 5 minutes and he fell asleep. So I then legged him, then threw him out the window.
You know what's going to happen in the magpie world? The magpies will be saying, if you see one accountant, that's one accountant, one for sorrow, two. One
for sorrow, two for sorrow, I think.
You don't want to see 4 accountants, say the Magpies. Matt Little is a Carlisle United fan, and Matt Little said Carlisle sold a young and very promising defender, Jared Branthwaite, to Everton, and fans were told that there was a host of add-ons included in the sale. He was subsequently loaned by Everton to PSV Eindhoven and played in the Champions League for them. If a loan fee was paid to Everton by PSV, would Carlisle be entitled to any of this via the sell-on clauses? If one of our clauses was a fee to be paid if and when Jared played in the Champions League, will this have been met or activated when he did so for PSV on loan rather than for Everton, as happened when Coutinho won the Champions League with Bayern on loan for Barcelona. It's an interesting question, Kieran, and I guess you'll have spoken to your secret lawyer, who will no doubt have used his catchphrase, "It depends."
Yes, that's what would have happened, but instead I decided to speak to our secret agent.
Oh, great. We haven't had the secret agent on for a while.
Yes, the secret agent. And I quote verbatim. The transfer agreement would state playing for the new club, in this case Everton, in the Champions League. So a loan to another club wouldn't count.
Okay.
Nearly all domestic transfers would do that. Now, it could be that Carlisle had, if they'd inserted what can only be described as a cunning clause into the contract, then that might have been the case. But our secret agent said highly unlikely. Okay, we can't give his name, but he's 007 is his nickname.
Oh, I thought you were hinting that his actual name was James Bond. In that case, that would have been a giveaway. I really like this next question, Kieran. It made me chuckle. And there's a certain degree of affection in this question, which I got quite sentimental about. It's from Adam and Jacob Roper. And Adam says, "My son Jacob takes great enjoyment from imposing large fines on players in Football Manager if they put so much as a foot up." I don't know how old Jacob is. Given the waiting list, he may be married by now. But I'm rather hoping that Jacob is 5, because I like the idea of a really cross 5-year-old fining loads of players in Football Manager for wearing headphones on the coach. Adam says, after João Felix's rather funny red card on his debut for Chelsea last season, Jacob asked me whether Chelsea will be able to fine the player as he was on loan from another club, and I have absolutely no idea if that was a thing. Can you help us out with this?
Well, here, both our secret lawyer and our secret agent have been of assistance, and this is a classic case of it depends. Normally, when you sign for a new club, you will be signing a slightly different contract, and that will set out the terms and conditions and the obligations in respect of all of the parties. So therefore, it could be that you would be subject to fines for inappropriate behaviour, and provided that those fines were not significantly more harsh than for the host club, the chances are that the player and the agent will just say, "Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to be an idiot. It's not my intention," and we'll just go along with them. And I think in terms of dressing room harmony, that would make a lot of sense, because what you don't want is a player coming from another club on loan, gets a red card, and he goes, "Well, I don't give a toss. I'm unaffected." And then the centre half goes, "Well, hold on, I got one 2 weeks ago, and it cost me a fortnight's wages." You can just see the bad feeling that it would cause. So I think there's likely, for the sense of harmony and the sake of consistency, and also encouraging good behaviour, that it is likely to be applied.
Yeah, I hope that settles that for you, Jacob. I like the cut of Jacob's jib, I have to say. I look forward to following his career with some interest. Now, this next question, Kieran, I think is a fascinating one.
It's a corker.
It is, and I would have thought it was purely theoretical, hypothetical, were it not for the fact that it turns out this may have happened. And it comes from Ben Archer. Ben says, "I was wondering if there are any FIFA rules regarding using a potential buyer of a club using due diligence to gain financial knowledge about the club and then using that knowledge to advantage themselves elsewhere. Here in Australia, there have been accusations that Orongan," and that's Ben Archer's description, I hasten to add, secret lawyer, if you're listening, Orongan named Bill Papast claimed he was trying to buy an A-League club and underwent due diligence at several clubs, including my own, Newcastle Jets, but then used the knowledge of player wages that he discovered to convince them to join him at Xanthi FC in Greece. While Mr. Papas is currently facing charges for fraud in both Greece and Australia, and Xanthi's future is looking uncertain, what could potentially stop him from doing this again, or a more competent business person from acting in a similar manner? So we often use the mortgage analogy, Kieran. So this is sort of similar to saying, well, I'm interested in buying your house, and you have a good look around the house. And basically, you're casing the house for your mate to come in and rob it. So it does seem. I don't know quite how much information you get. If you say I want to buy this club, I don't know how much the selling club would give you in terms of information wise. But it does seem that it's open to exploitation, doesn't it?
Potentially, it is, but for me, it seems a very expensive way of going about this particular line of business. So what would normally happen is, let's say that you were interested in buying a club. You went along to the current owner and you said, I'm you know that it's up for sale. You said, right, I'm a credible buyer. And the first thing that they're going to say to you then is, okay, in which case we will grant you access to our data room if you pay a non-refundable deposit of X.
Oh, right.
So this is a way of getting rid of the tire kickers.
Right, okay.
Who come around. So therefore, the chances are it's going to cost you money. Then, to be honest, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to employ some credible. So you're going to get your finance department, or you get some accountants and lawyers to take a look at all of the assets and all of the contracts, including, it has to be fair, it has to be said, would be the employment contracts, because you want to know what obligations you're taking on, for how long, how much it's going to potentially cost you, and so on. So that is due diligence, and that is a fairly common facet. If you do that, there would also be an obligation to sign some form of non-disclosure agreement, such that you would not use that information for commercial purposes. So in respect of the allegations against Mr. Pappas, he would have been in breach of contract there. I've got to be honest, the much cheaper way of going around dealing with that is having a word with the player's agent. Because they are gossips, and you can find out. You can find out from 3 or 4 agents. What's the going rate at Club X, and they'll go, we'll have a chat with you, because potentially, that's part of their role. And I'm not criticising agents here, but it is you know lots of showbiz gossip. I know lots of amortisation gossip, and football agents know lots of football gossip. And people talk, and they tend to talk in their own circles. But it's not football's a gossip industry, just as all others are. And it is as we've often we've described some clubs as Brownbergs, in the sense that we can describe 10% of the muck at the top, and the 90% is which we've found out from talking to people in the game, talking to journalists, talking to other interested parties, which we feel is not appropriate, or we feel that from a legal standpoint that we don't want to produce a guy or ourselves at risk by saying things which we can't necessarily back up. It could be the case, Ben, but I honestly think that it would be a very expensive way of going about finding out information. Going back to the first part of Ben's question, are there any specific FIFA rules which preclude this? I don't think there are, but I think you will find that if I was the seller of the club, I would put as part of the due diligence that there would, in order to protect myself, that you cannot share this information with third parties. In doing so would be a breach of contract, and there will be financial consequences of doing so.
In the unlikely event that I did approach Steve Parish to buy Crystal Palace Football Club, and he would certainly be demanding proof that I had the funds, would I be expecting to see every bit of information? Would I be expected to get access to all the data about every financial aspect of the club, or are there things that would be considered so commercially sensitive that the selling club would legitimately be able to withhold?
If he was looking to sell the club, then it's exactly the same as you or I looking, going back to our we always use our house as an analogy. If somebody's coming to seriously think about buying my house or your house, then you've got to show them everything. You've got to show them electricity bills. You've got to, you've got an obligation to say, well, has there been any structural repairs in the last X years, and so on. And in terms of ongoing contracts, you might have it wouldn't be the case for a personal level, but if you're leaving behind, the sofa and you'd bought that on HP, you say, well, you didn't have to take on that contract, and things like that. So you would have an obligation. You'd have, in theory, access to practically everything, because how on earth can you come up with an appropriate price to pay for the football club unless you know exactly what you're buying in terms of assets and exactly what you're inheriting in terms of contractual obligations?
All right, and also presumably then, if in this theoretical me buying Crystal Palace, once I'd paid the money to get access to the data, I'm then paying more money to somebody like you, because the first thing I would do is to get in, because I wouldn't understand it, and I presume there are some people with business experience who wouldn't have the necessary financial experience to analyse those data. So are you then spending more money on getting a team of people to go over those figures with a fine-tooth comb?
Yes, if you take a look at any major M&A, mergers and acquisition deal, you've got a nominal acquirer, and then they will have a team of professional acquaintances, which, depending on what the nature. If we take a look at the Manchester United deal, for example, there's going to be bankers involved, accountants, lawyers, and other professionals. So the costs start mounting up very quickly, because we've seen in the case of the administrations of clubs like Derby and Wigan just how much these people are charging on an hourly basis.
I didn't like the way you said professional acquaintances there, Kieran. You came over very southeast London again, as you do every now and again. Uncle Terry would use the phrase professional acquaintances. Our next question, Kieran, is one of those questions that is a boon for both of us. We both enjoy this sort of question because it has a level of technical detail that you really like to dive into, and it gives me 5 minutes to go and make a cup of tea. It comes from Ed Pennington. I know I have to concentrate reading the question, Kieran, let alone listening to the answer. Ed Pennington says the principle of amortisation in general kind of makes sense to me, but it never seems quite right to me in the case of transfers. Yes, you buy their registration, but you could also say you're buying a one-off opportunity to offer them a first contract. So why should you amortise it over the length of that contract? My question is, what's the worst that would happen if you only allowed football clubs to amortise transfer fees over 1 year instead of UEFA's 5-year cap? FFP is already averaging over 3 years, so it wouldn't make losses too bumpy, and clubs wouldn't be incentivised to commit to longer contracts to keep everything together.
Yes, I think this is an intriguing one, Ed. This is actually to do with amortisation is an application of what's known as international financial reporting standards. These are the rules which apply to all transactions for all companies, or in the UK, we've got our local version of those as well. So what are you doing when you buy a player? Well, as Ed rightly points out, what you're doing is that you are giving somebody else compensation to acquire the registration of that player. And then the length of the contract gives you a degree of protection from anybody else taking your player. So it is that compensation stroke protection fee that is being amortized over the life of the contract. So it would seem, if I'm signing Caicedo for 100 million on a 10-year contract, then it works out as 10 million a year in terms of effectively, that is the protection fee. Nobody else can take my player away. Could you do it over 1 year? Yeah, absolutely. That would only take FIFA, would only take the Premier League to go and change their rules to say that for our internal profitability and sustainability purposes, we are going to limit amortization to a single year. What would the result of that be? It would mean that it would be very difficult for Chelsea to spend £1 billion in a year and still be in compliance. So you could say it would therefore encourage a more sustainable approach, especially with the fairly ludicrous situation. Chelsea sold Mason Mount to Manchester United for £60 million. And because he was an academy player, that meant that they had £60 million going into this year's pot for FFP purposes. They signed Caicedo, 100 million it was an 8-year contract, so that's 12.5 million a year. So that effectively means that for every Mason Mount that is sold, you can sign almost 5 Caicedos, and you go and still be in balance. And intuitively, that just does seem a bit daft. So having a 1-year amortisation fee for FFP purposes, I think it would create a more balanced and a more nuanced transfer market. But the clubs don't want that, because if you've got a new owner, what they want to do, as we've seen in the case of the Clear Lake Capital Todd Boehly takeover of Chelsea, is spend, spend, spend. Fans, and I've never really understood this mentality. Fans seem to get a sense of achievement if they see their club spending lots and lots of money, because we're living sort of our lives vicariously in reflection of the activities of the football club. So in terms of your personal self-worth, many people like to be associated with certain clubs that spend a lot of money. So that would be tempered. And then we would come to another big stakeholder, which is the media. Now, what do the media spend? They spend half their time talking about football matches, but they actually spend the other half of their time talking about transfer fees and rumours. And I think this would curtail the extent of some clubs' ambitions, because you would effectively have to have a one out, one in sort of sense of mentality in terms of the overall values of the fees. So it could take place, Ed. You'd then have to get agreement with UEFA and FIFA, because it would certainly put English clubs at a significant disadvantage compared to the other clubs which are under the UEFA banner, who are using this 5-year cap in terms of amortisation. But it's an interesting one, and it's an intriguing one, and I've often highlighted the anomaly in terms of the way that we sell players and we book the profits immediately, and you buy players and you spread the profits. It does appear to be an inconsistency. Inconsistency in football applies both off the pitch and on it, though.
You could quite clearly hear the phrase "spend some money" yesterday at Selhurst Park, as yet another of our players limped off, clutching their hamstring. The sound of 20,000 people saying "spend some expletive money," insert name of club owner here. It's an interest. We're looking to do another couple of nostalgia pods, Kieran, probably to broadcast over the Christmas period. And how lovely that I get to say Christmas. It's because it's coming, Kieran. This sun's going to be disappearing eventually. Curse it. But one of our first nostalgia pods was about the Trevor Francis transfer, the first £1 million transfer. Would Nottingham Forest back then have paid the full amount once? Because it strikes me, when we were growing up, Kieran, that the idea of spreading transfer fees over a number of years wasn't one that existed. Or am I wrong? Has amortisation always been in football?
No, amortisation only came into football when there was a change of rules, which was around about 1995, 1996. So before that, you didn't used to have it.
Right. Okay.
So it wouldn't have applied. I mean, I think you need to separate out amortisation, which is best described as accounting nonsense, with cash flow, which is sort of your contractual obligations. So if we take a look at, for example, at the James Maddison deal between Leicester and Spurs, Leicester have agreed with Spurs that there's going to be 3 instalments, 1 paid immediately and 2 paid on an annual basis. So that James Maddison will be paid for within 24 months of him signing for the club. But he signed a 5-year contract, so his amortisation will be over 5 years. The cash flow will be over 2. And I think Spurs have got, we don't talk about football, I think they've got one of the bargains of the summer market. I just love watching James Maddison, and also the fact that he loves a wind-up.
Yeah, he's a wonderful player. I'm going to ask you this next question, Kieran, and then I'm going to walk over and shut all the windows so we can, the remnants of last night's party from across the road, they've obviously woken up and decided to carry on. So I'll ask you the question and go and shut the window. Rich Massingham has this question, strong name, this week's strongest name so far. Rich Massingham says, last season, Kolo Touré was sacked by Wigan after just 59 days, which got me thinking, do football managers have a 3-month probation like most other employees, and therefore will Wigan have avoided having to pay him off?
It depends. So guess who I've been talking to. If I was advising the manager, I would say don't accept any such clause in a contract, because there could be matters completely outside of your control. But sometimes managers are desperate to take a job, and they will accept that it's a very high risk profession, and that therefore They want to get their effectively their foot in the door as far as a place in football management is concerned, and will take whatever the clauses are in the contract. So it comes down to the contract itself. It will be, I think, unusual if you sign a 3-year contract to be allowed to be sacked within 3 months, unless it was for gross misconduct or something of that nature. But never say never in the world of football, and I'm a great believer that the cult of the manager is vastly overplayed. I mean, some do make changes, but if you've inherited a squad, especially during halfway through the season, there is very much a limited ability to change things around.
Now, Kieran, we know from experience that our good friend Andy Holt, the owner of Accrington Stanley, has many issues with the streaming service in football. And so do a lot of fans. And a lot of the fans' issue is, how does it work? And Rob Harrison is a classic example. Rob Harrison says, I'm a huge fan of Dorking Wanderers in the National League. Well, I live in the USA, and that has made it a bit more difficult to watch my team. So that's a slight understatement there, Rob. I think the old USA Dorking commute on a Saturday morning. But with the launch of the National League TV streaming service, it has become easier. I have heard, says Rob, that when you pay for a matchday pass, monthly subscription or half-season pass, that the money is split 60% to the team you have designated as the one you support, 15% to operation cost, and the rest into a pool to be distributed evenly at a later date. Is my understanding correct?
Right. I've searched high and wide in respect of this. I can't find the exact numbers, but I think Rob is broadly right, and I think also that the National League deserve a lot of credit for coming up with these innovative schemes. I think this is partly it's partly been driven by what we've seen happen at Wrexham, because Reynolds and McElhenney have created a cult interest on Wrexham, and that's not a criticism at all. I think what they've done is absolutely amazing.
A global cult interest, Kieran.
Yes,
really. Yeah.
And therefore everybody can potentially benefit for it. So you can become, or when Wrexham were in the National League, you could become a nominal Wrexham fan, and you would have been able to have money going towards them, b helping the National League in terms of its compliance costs and its obligations towards running the service, and then other clubs would have benefited as well. So this was very much as far as the overseas audiences were concerned. With regards to the domestic National League TV pass, again, that is in operation, but it only tends to operate outside of the 3 p.m. blackout period. So your club does benefit, and if you are, for want of a better word, an exile, or you are a new fan and you've seen what's happened and you want to become attached to an individual club, that the club that you now support is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this.
And so, if you support a League One or League Two team, Kieran, is the streaming money distributed in a different way?
It's broadly the same.
Okay.
You can buy a pass, and again, this will be for it is restricted to the games because of the blackout rules and so on. But your club is the biggest beneficiary of your support, and that is quite important for those clubs that have big fan bases. And this is why the likes of Andy Holt says, look, we're struggling enough. This is going to increase the imbalance between the home team and the away team. And I think one of Andy's reservations has been, and I absolutely understand where he's coming from. We've been to Accrington. We had an absolutely fantastic time there as Shawadi Waddy's warm-up act. But they are looking on a Saturday afternoon to make money from selling tickets to away fans, and also those away fans, spending money on pies and pints and so on. If it reduces the away attendances, then you can understand Andy's concern, and I think that things should be fair and proportionate when it comes to the distribution.
A penultimate question, Kieran, asked you to give a précis of something, and I'm not sure whether a précis of this is appropriate or
Yes.
possible, to be perfectly honest. It comes from Warren Rubinstein. Warren says there have been several stories over the last year or so about corruption in the awarding of TV contracts via FIFA for World Cup events. Can you give us a summary of where this corruption has taken place?
Right. I mean, we could have a whole history lesson with regards to this. So I think if we go back to the 1990s, you had the likes of Havelange and Texera who did take large sums. More recently, that there have been accusations with regards to Combicol, which is sort of the Caribbean federation, and our very good friend, non-friend, Jack Warner, who is effectively a prisoner on the island of Trinidad because there is a warrant held out for him by the FBI. I think it's the FBI in respect of various bribe takings, but to sort of try to sort of put it into some form of context. We've also got executives of one of Fox's companies who have been accused through a myriad of offshore companies. There's nothing crude about it. These things tend to be quite sophisticated. It's not a case of television company A paying executive B £5 million or $5 million is more likely to be the case, and then they win a contract. It's all done in very, very shady means. So there've been accusations for the allocation of some of the Copa Libertadores, but also the FIFA World Cup competitions. And you can understand the benefits to the TV companies because they end up paying a lower fee overall for the rights. The person being bribed gets a large wedge. FIFA are the losers here. It's not often that I say that when it comes to money. When there are locals, if you take a look also at the awarding of the 2018 and the 2022 World Cup, which resulted in, I would say, the biggest broom and the biggest carpet of all time, even though there was a formal investigation. A lot of the information was effectively redacted, or in the case of the Russian government, they said all of the computers which we used to put together the 2018 World Cup, we hired them and we gave them back to the company that we leased them from. So therefore, we don't have access to any information. And that was duly noted by FIFA. They go, oh, right, okay, that's fine. Oh, well, these things happen, don't they? So there is a myriad of stories. Ultimately, whenever you've got large sums of money involved and bureaucrats, there is the temptation in football for money to pass hands. And people will say, well, bribery and corruption takes place everywhere, and it does. And I think the people that are most miffed are the people who did bribe the likes of Jack Warner, who then turns around and says, yeah, but he didn't bribe me enough, so I took a bigger bribe from somebody else.
Imagine taking the moral high ground because your bribe wasn't as big as somebody else's bribe.
Exactly.
That Russian computer thing is a little bit like Rishi Sunak this week saying, I'd love to give the inquiry access to all my WhatsApps, but I change my phone every month and I forgot to back it up. So whereupon Mrs. Sunak should be saying, why are you changing your phone every month? That's a takeaway from there. I mean, the difficulty for the people investigating this, and we do mention it in our book that's coming out on Thursday, Kieran, the FIFA and their slightly lax attitude to this sort of thing, as they would say in Father Ted. But the trouble is, it happens via second, third, and fourth parties. It's a very complicated trail. So even for people like the FBI, probably the people in the world with the most experience of this sort of thing, it's incredibly difficult to unpick who's given money to where and the trail that it takes before it eventually reaches the pockets of the likes of Jack Warner.
Yes, yeah, they are. They're a law unto themselves, FIFA, which as a charity, they can effectively make up their own rules, and that's what we've seen happen.
Our final question today, Kieran, is one of my favourite questions. It's one of my favourite. There's somebody here's got something to get off their chest, and they clearly have been banned from several local pubs for constantly asking this question, and they've decided that the only way around it is to ask us. It just made me laugh so much, this question, and it comes from Ivor Noel. And Ivor's question is, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why have club pin badges dispensed with the traditional fastener and opted for the inferior spike and push-on cap system? Surely it's not due to cost. Or is it that you're more likely to lose the blooming thing and you have to buy another one? Whatever the answer, thanks for letting me vent my grievance on air. It's just, I could just imagine if Ivor was a drinker in the Pawsons and Graham Delaney would go, oh my God, she loses one badge. And 5 years later, she's still going on about it. I mean, I'm with Ivor on this one. She's absolutely right, but it could well be due to cost, Kieran, because the people who manufacture these things will look to cut costs as much as often as possible, will they not?
Yeah, all decisions ultimately come down to power and money, and as far as the sale of pin badges are concerned, it would be linked to a financial issue. And the manufacturers are looking to have methods which will reduce their costs. And that's one way it could have been achieved. It was simply have been somebody will have come up with an alternative method of producing pin badges, and if you can save yourself 5% of the overall cost, they'll go, yeah, that works, and we'll do it. So the fact that you end up with potentially an inferior product, I think with the exception of Ivor, I've not heard any other people complaining about it, unless this is unless we're taking the top off a bottle of fizzy pop and it's all about to explode. There's been a lot of very frustrated pin badge collectors who have been privately moaning to themselves, and now we could have a national cause on our hands.
Oh, we will. There will be, and Ivor's quite right. There's nothing worse. It's particularly when I find it with charity badges, because you want to show off that you've given some money to this particular charity, and you look down and it's gone. Somebody else would have picked that up and would be getting the credit that I should be getting. Sorry about the very loud ding there. I thought I turned it off, and sadly, it's from the WhatsApp group I'm in that speculates on who will have been knocked out of Strictly Come Dancing last night, which is
you're so rock and roll.
It's not so, as a well-known South London hard man. It's not something I want people to know about. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you. And if you do so, you can get access to our chat community and our regular quizzes. We have another Discord thing coming up in a few weeks' time. And you can do all that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. There are 2 Price of Football live shows coming up. We'll be at the Lowry Theatre in Salford on October the 22nd and the Royal Yacht on Jersey on November the 7th. There's still a few tickets available, not many, but you can get them by going to priceoffootball.com or to the venues themselves. And if you'd like to pre-order our new book, Unfit and Improper Persons, An Idiot's Guide to Owning a Football Club, so you get it as soon as it comes out on the 12th of October, which is Thursday, you can now get 30% off by using the code PriceOfFootball30 at checkout when you order via bloomsbury.com. That's PriceOfFootball30, all in the big letters, via bloomsbury.com. And if you'd like to buy one of our other books or get yourself a Price of Football t-shirt, you can also find details on that website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday, the same day. Thursday, the same day as the book comes out. Yeah. With a news pod, Kieran. I don't know what we're going to do without Southend and Scunthorpe.
It's going to be the shortest show of all time.
It's going to be really short, isn't it? In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell before he scuttles off to see Brighton versus Liverpool. A little glimpse into the mentality of every football fan everywhere, Kieran. I was one of the producers of I Got News for You is a huge Liverpool fan, and obviously I was offering him my exhortations that they get 3 points today, and he went, no, because the referees, we can't win, current referee. I said, no, but this week of all weeks, you're going to get every single decision. We'll go with Liverpool's way. But no, it won't work like that because referees will be so upset. We won't get anything. We won't get. He actually said, I'll be surprised if we get the first kickoff. So it's like, okay. We all think that way, Kieran. But I'm sure it'll be a cracking game, Kieran. But in the meantime, as I say, you've just got time for your customary farewell.
Yes, just about. Yes, and I believe that some bookshops have been releasing copies of our book early.
Yes.
So we've had a few pictures on social media already.
Yes.
So we'll be investigating that. Yeah, and I hope you enjoy the book. We won't give the ending away, but it was Professor Plum in the conservatory with the lead piping.
It might also be, Kieran, that I've given all my free copies away. So it could be that, unfortunately.
Yes. So thank you everybody for your support for the show. We genuinely appreciate it. We enjoy the interaction, and we do try to respond if at all possible. There's lots of ways of supporting the show, and the people at Patreon, we always have a bit of a giggle with you on Discord, where we can say the things that we can't necessarily say on the show. Although producer Guy has had a word with both myself and Kevin to say, just because you say it on Discord, it still goes into the public domain. So apologies to Manager X, Director X, and Goat Y. That particular story was just an innocent discussion. There's another way to support the show, and that's to go on to your app, which you use to download your podcast, and to give us a review. Helps us in the charts, helps us to have a bit of credibility. You can write whatever you want. So you want to vent your spleen, you can vent your spleen with regards to pin badges, or you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Thomas Tuchel and Prince William. Sure, those two have got nothing in common, have they, Kevin?
I'm trying to recall. I don't think so, Kieran. I feel like I'm being led down a potential bear trap here. It's like, when you used to go to an away game and you'd never been there before, and you'd ask somebody and they'd go, "Oh yeah, just follow me down this alleyway into this housing estate." This is where it is. Bye everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.